Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. The United States is reportedly considering a bold new proposal to Iran, believe it or not, a $30 billion deal aimed at persuading Iran to halt all uranium enrichment. After the illegal and unprovoked, under international law, strikes on Iran's 3 uranium enrichment facilities, Iran reiterated its right to a peaceful nuclear program and said that it would continue it. Now the United States appears to want to default to the carrot and stick approach again, promising money and saying that it would lift some economic sanctions in exchange for Iran's enrichment policy changes. The Trump administration is said to be making an effort to return to the negotiating table with Tehran, and this time with a dramatically different set of incentives and conditions. Now, I would point out that it is worth remembering that Tehran was at the negotiating table just several weeks ago. Tehran was at the negotiating table earlier this month, just when Israel, with the backing of Washington, launched its very first strike on Iran on June the 13th, sabotaging negotiations, which Trump subsequently acknowledged were a ruse to make Iran believe that the United States was indeed negotiating in good faith. It was not. At the heart of the new proposed deal is Washington's non-negotiable demand, and it is for Iran to cease all uranium enrichment activities. In exchange for that, Iran would gain access to up to $30 billion in financial support. But here's the catch. The money would not come from Washington. Instead, the funding would be provided by Arab states, likely U.S. allies in the Persian Gulf. The United States is ready to lead negotiations, but we're not footing the bill, so the Trump administration effectively wants to have its cake and eat it too. Other proposals are also being considered. These include limited sanctions relief and the unfreezing of $6 billion worth of Iranian assets currently locked, currently frozen in foreign banks. Another component involves Gulf nations financing a new civilian nuclear facility to replace Iran's Fordo plant, although it is unclear why this would even be an option given the extent of damage to Fordo from American strikes and Iran's relations with the Gulf nations. All these efforts fall under what the White House calls a push for, quote, a comprehensive peace agreement. Steve Witkoff, Trump's special representative for the Middle East, told in an interview to CNBC that the plan is designed to ensure regional stability while preventing Iran from developing nuclear weapons. Now, this is of course part of propaganda because there has been no indication whatsoever that Iran has an intention to develop a nuclear weapon. None whatsoever. Iran said many times that it had no intention to develop a nuclear weapon, and subsequently, that statement was confirmed by U.S. intelligence services. What's likely going on behind the scenes is pure panic. Panic in Israel and the White House because following the attacks on its sovereign territory and its nuclear facilities, which is terrorism under international law, Tehran responded by suspending cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. And so that move effectively shut out international inspectors from several key nuclear sites in Iran. Prior to the attacks, the International Atomic Energy Agency had full access to the facilities in terms of making sure that Iran was in compliance with the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Iran was fully in compliance, by the way, and it was reflected in separate independent reports issued and available online for those who are interested. Because the International Atomic Energy Agency is said to have provided private nuclear-related information on Iran's nuclear sites to, let's just say, outside parties who subsequently used that information for attacks on Iran, Tehran made a decision to protect itself and to deny access and information sharing with the International Atomic Energy Agency. That uncertainty is fueling growing concern in Washington and Tel Aviv. Some analysts in Washington now argue that offering Iran financial incentives in the current climate following U.S. strikes could actually backfire, reinforcing the belief among hardliners in Tehran that nuclear weapons are essential for their survival. But others would actually argue, and I would agree with it, others would argue that it is the bombing of a sovereign nation, of a sovereign state, and its nuclear sites that would drive any reasonable person, you don't have to be a hardliner, it would drive any reasonable person, including Tehran's government, to seek nuclear weapons now to counter its adversary in the region that does possess close to 200 nuclear warheads and refuses to be part of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty as well as the International Atomic Energy Agency's inspections. There's also skepticism about whether Arab states will be willing to fund Iran's peaceful nuclear development. The idea of Saudi Arabia or the UAE financing Tehran's nuclear infrastructure, even under strict international oversight, is likely to face major regional pushback, and for good reasons. And frankly, from a national security perspective, it makes very little sense for Tehran to allow US-aligned actors in the region to have a crucial say and to play a crucial role in the security and safety of its peaceful nuclear program. Still, the Trump administration appears committed to the strategy. It sees the financial package as a way to break the current deadlock, the same deadlock that it single-handedly created with the help of one of its allies, by shifting the cost burden onto the Gulf nations and keeping U.S. sanctions largely intact. The Trump administration hopes to strike a deal that looks very tough at home while still presenting an off-ramp to Tehran. That's apparently what Washington is planning to do. Of course, that might be Washington's view, but although the population of Iran has suffered under the brutal sanctions regime, it clearly was brought together by the attacks on its cities, by the attacks on its nuclear facilities. And now the Iranians actually realize that Washington is not to be trusted.
Diplomacy produce a solution in 2 weeks.
Well, I think it's up to Americans, the United States, to show their determination for going for a negotiated solution, or they have something else in their mind and they want to attack Iran anyway. So they had perhaps this plan, and they just needed negotiations, perhaps, to cover it up. We don't know how we can trust them anymore. What they did was, in fact, a betrayal to diplomacy.
The next few weeks could determine the trajectory of nuclear diplomacy in the region for years to come. It will certainly be really interesting to observe what happens and whether anything comes to fruition. Of course, we know that the long-term plan likely remains the same following the attacks, and any future escalation is likely just a matter of time. Remember to show your support, like, subscribe, and share. Support my work on Substack and Patreon. You will find them linked in the description below. I would greatly appreciate your support, and I look forward to seeing you here again tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.